Certainty of burns, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Hi everyone, I'm Kayla with McNerdy Costumes and Props, bringing you my first ever comprehensive build video on this massive project I've undertaken. The Students for Sustainability at Central Community College and the Nebraska State Fair Sustainability Fund have graciously given me the opportunity to work on this enormous project that's been on my mind for a long time. Now I wanted to make something extra special, something that takes me back to my roots and something that showcases what drove my passion for magic and dragons and bravery. I've always loved the story of The Sword and the Stone. BBC's television show Merlin did an amazing job. Every time I re-binge the series on Netflix, the part where Arthur pulls the sword from the stone gives me chills. I love the druidic runes and the way that the sword looks when it flashes in the light. So that's what I've decided to make, a fully functional sword in the stone that only the one true king can remove. Or queen, I guess these are progressive times. Like I usually do, I'll be using as much recycled products as I can in this project, not only because it's better for the environment, but to help save on costs on this massive project. Since this project is so large, I'll be splitting this video series into 3 parts. Part 1, the sword. I'd like to use recycled cans to melt down to cast the sword into a replica of the one from the TV show, making sure to catch every detail. Part 2, the stone inside. I need to design a mechanism that clamps the sword into place and keeps it from being removed. Part 3, the stone outside. I want to create a realistic texture of stone around the outside using recycled plastic, which will keep it lightweight, durable, and cost-effective. Again, because of the size of this project, I'll be doing a comprehensive style of videos, briefly touching on each of the processes involved. Otherwise, the video would be obscenely long. However, if you are interested in seeing in-depth instructionals on my processes and what's involved, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, throughout this video trilogy, I'll be referencing the videos that I used on YouTube to teach me how to do these processes, since a lot of this is a learning curve for me as well. So without further ado, I'm already here in my dungeon. Let's get started. The first thing I need is a master sword, one that gets molded to cast into the final product. So I picked up a foam prop LARPing sword in a similar size and shape to what I wanted. Then I cut out the runes on the blade in 2mm EVA craft foam and applied them to the blade. I covered the hilt in more foam to fill in the designs and sealed the whole thing with Warbla, which is a thermal plastic that becomes malleable and moldable when it's heated. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't used the butcher string on the handle and the hilt because they created problems during molding and casting, but it all turned out okay. Then I sealed it all in a layer of PVA glue for a smooth surface during molding. I decided to mold the sword first from silicone and cast it out of resin. I ended up casting 2 swords because I needed 2 sword halves split down the middle for an accurate sand mold later on. Bill from Punish Pops does amazing molding and casting tutorials, so I'll link that down below. I sanded one side of each sword completely flat for the 2 halves that will be molded for metal casting. I had to make a box that the sword gets molded and cast in for pouring the aluminum. Pretty easy, just 2 rectangles from 2x4s with little scrap wood notches to align them together properly when I put the boxes back together. Then it was time to break out the Devil Forge furnace and melt the aluminum pop cans into pure ingots for the sword. We use muffin pans to mold the ingots because they're cheap and easy to replace. We also made a homemade welded steel crucible because this whole process is delayed by the COVID-19 outbreak, and Amazon was taking forever shipping my crucible.
So I'm absolutely floored by the generosity of people willing to help with this project. I was having such a hard time getting aluminum cans because so many people turned them in for money. I was attempting to try to find a way to get more when I reached out on my social media hoping that somebody was able to help me. Ernst Toyota in Columbus heard my pleas for help and sent me some beautiful gifts. I have never been so excited to receive trash in my entire life. Here to help me today with all of the unboxing and the fun that ensues is Crystal.
Hi guys!
Say hi!
They were kind enough to send me a radiator and a whole engine block to take apart and use the aluminum inside for the project.
There we go. All right, we also have in here an alternator. Ooh, look at all the copper in there. We could find a use for that. Maybe make the hilts out of Nordic gold. Oh, so there's that. All right. Oh, water pump. Yeah, it's just the belt tensioner for the engine, but yay! I'm so excited. Oh, it's an airbag inflator.
Yep. It's an airbag inflator sensor.
We had to separate the aluminum from the steel and all of the parts, which involved a lot of disassembly. The sleeves on the inside of the piston walls were also pretty stuck in there, and the steel won't melt in my little furnace. I'll figure that out later. Once everything was disassembled, we had to find a way to fit the aluminum pieces into the crucible to melt. The cutting wheel wasn't strong enough. The manual persuasion of the sledgehammer was too slow and dangerous from the flying pieces of metal.
I don't know where that went. See if this works any better.
Even the Sawzall just wasn't cutting it. It just kept clogging up the blade because the aluminum was so soft. I was just about to give up.
Do you guys ever have those friends that you say, I bet you can't break up this engine with the hammer? And they say, game on. Dylan is such friend.
This engine? This hammer? I win. I win.
And the engine is gone. Engine M106300, whatever that symbol is. And I didn't know this, that now engines come with these. You are toast.
Little pieces like this from the cylinder just end up in the crucible, and I fish the steel out later on.
thanks to Big Stack D on the melting tutorials. Now we have plenty of aluminum for casting multiple swords. Any guesses on how many this will make? Hit that subscribe button to find out. It's also so crazy to me how many impurities I have to skim off the cans versus the engine block. Even the muffins show the difference. I set aside a few to make some coins that will be used later on in the project. I sculpted the coins out of foam clay with a simple sword depression. I wanted some size variance in the coins, so I made one slightly larger than the other and molded them both out of silicone and cast them out of resin. Then I sanded down the back surface to make them completely flat for sand casting. I attempted a pouring trench to keep the designs from getting messed up during the pouring, but in the end I just poured them one by one. That's right. I'm still in Nebraska. Sifting sand. Again, with the pandemic shipping issues, I won't have enough casting sand for the sword mold, so I decided to make my own by sifting sand for finer particles. Both the sand process and the mold box were made using video instructionals by the King of Random. When the process gets tedious and boring, just convince your kids it's fun and get some free help. The next step was grinding up some unscented kitty litter into clay powder for mixing into the sifted sand. The clay and the moisture help hold the sand together during molding. I backed the mold box with a piece of plywood to keep the surface flat and dusted baby powder over the sword to keep it from sticking to the mold. Then I dusted a layer of the good expensive sand over the sword to capture the detail and backed it with the homemade casting sand, packing the sand down with scrap wood blocks in between each layer. Then I used a flat piece to strike off the excess and screwed the backboard into place to keep it together as I flipped the now very heavy box over. Then I removed the plywood that the sword was sitting on and attached the second box, repeating the process again for the second half of the mold.
I put the lid on the back half of the box and attempted to split it apart to remove the sword halves and carve my pouring sprues when the mold failed. My best guess being from a combination of not enough moisture and not packing the sand in good enough. I was able to salvage the bottom half of the mold, but the top half had to be redone. In the frustration and the late night delirium, I forgot to turn my camera on for the channel carving, but I'll link a video down below for you if you're curious about this process.
So now, I'm gonna pack this again. Between every layer. Like, I'm gonna pack it. Like Green Bay pack it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. See, that's Captain Obvious right there. Should get her a badge.
Now it was finally time to pour, after months of planning this moment. After letting the mold cool, I split it apart to reveal my prize.
And the sword is finally finished. Well, mostly. I'm gonna have to take some time with a Dremel and a lot of patience to get this to exactly where I need it. There's a few things I'd do differently since I'm still relatively new to casting. There were a lot of things that I wish I had done differently from the start. One of them being the placement of the sprue where I poured. I was concerned about the metal getting choked up in this bottleneck section here, so I put the pouring sprue here instead of off the end of the pommel like I should have. And as you can see, the result of that was not very fun. However, I think I'm just going to fill that in with some epoxy because this whole thing is getting covered with leather anyway, which brings me to my next point. Another thing that I do differently is I think I would not add these butcher string details along the handle and along the hilt here because they have done nothing but cause problems for me since the very start. So I think I may actually sand them off my master and just have a smooth surface, and then at the end of everything, this is all going to be gold anyway that'll get painted, so I can just wrap some wire around there and then spray paint the whole thing gold. So, but otherwise I am very pleased with how it came out. The blade is very straight and even, something I did not expect. And yeah, that's just going to take a little bit of sanding work to make it smooth on the edges, and I definitely want to make it blunt. It's just a prop sword, but I really love how the detail came out. But now I have a functional piece to test inside the stone mechanism. I am so excited for the next phase of this project. Please like or subscribe if you want to see the rest of this project and see how it turns out. I'm also relatively new at a lot of these processes involved, so if you have any comments or suggestions, anything that could make my life easier in the future doing other projects, let me know. I also want to give a shout out to House of Chains. I also wanted to thank House of Chains for providing the music for all the videos in this build. I love supporting local musicians, and I play rhythm guitar with these awesome guys. You can check out their Facebook page, linked down below. I also want to support other local musicians and help people get their music out there. So if you have music that you want to get out there that it's becoming really tough, especially right now during the whole COVID-19 stuff, let me know and I will definitely love to feature your music in my videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks for phase 2. Thanks!